I bring to you today Dave Clark, a phenomenal human being doing what he can with what little has been given to him to make a difference in this world in which we live. Dave, welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Carol. First of all, I want to thank you for having me here today. I want to share a couple things with you before I get started. My wife and 3-year-old son, yes, I said 3-year-old son, are here. There they are here. They're up with me. We were contemplating bringing him. My wife wanted to attend today, and during breakfast this morning at the Marriott, we were having breakfast, and the little guy all of a sudden, out of nowhere, screamed, "Mommy, I've got to poop." We figured we'd better not bring him today. So he is not here, neither is she. But and I wanted to share what I thought was an appropriate story before I get into my story, seeing that we're at Sawgrass. When I was an athlete, I played golf. I was a hacker, and never any good, but I like to get out and whack the ball around a little bit. And my wife and my dad were playing with me one day on a par 3, 145-yard hole. And I got up and I whacked the ball, and the green was a little bit downhill. You couldn't see it well. So I whacked the ball, and they teed off, and we start walking down the fairway, and I couldn't find my ball. I couldn't see it. And I thought, geez, I had a little temper when I was an athlete. So we keep walking, and they see their ball, and I can't find my ball. Finally, my wife goes onto the green. She goes, "It's in the hole." I had a hole-in-one on a par 3, 145. What I don't usually tell in that story is the hole prior, a par 5, I shot an 11. I was pissed. So I just whacked the ball on that par 3, and as luck would have it, it went in. My story is a polio story, and there's people in this room, I'm sure, that remember the polio epidemics back in the 1950s. I got polio in 1953, and my story right now is a story of doing things that you don't think are quite possible to achieve when you look at it from the beginning point. When I had polio, my parents were forced to give me up, essentially, and go to a reconstruction home in Ithaca, New York, which was about 40 miles from my hometown of Corning, New York. I was there for 11 months. And when my mom related a story that the doctors told my parents on the first day over there, they said, we don't have much hope for your son, Mr. and Mrs. Clark. If he does survive, he's going to be a vegetable. He has no control of his neck muscles or many other muscles in his body. My mom looked at the doctor, she said, "Doctor, if he could just walk someday." And she said, the doctor looked back at her and said, "You're wrong, Mrs. Clark, if he can just use his brain for himself one day." And that doctor was dead on, because in my opinion, the most important muscle in your body is between the ears. It's your brain. If you think you have a shot at doing something, quite possibly you'll be able to do it. If you don't think you can do something, you're not going to have a shot at doing it. And that's the attitude that I've taken my whole life. When I came out of the reconstruction home in Ithaca, New York, I was wearing those. A little set of leg braces up to the hips, all the way down to my feet, and walking with crutches. That's how I came out. I like to say that I grew up using 4 feet instead of 2. Two crutches and my own feet, and that's how I grew up. I had a pretty normal childhood growing up after coming out of the reconstruction home. I had 2 brothers. When I needed the crap kicked out of me, they kicked the crap out of me. When I wanted to kick the crap out of them, I kicked the crap out of them, and it was a normal setting until I got to school. Once I started attending grade school, I was made to feel different. Now, I had the greatest set of parents the world has ever given any guy, any girl. They never made me feel different. They never prevented me from trying something. And all those things combined led me to where I'm at today. But when I got to grade school, a whole different story. Picked on incessantly, called names. Don't know why we feel the need to do that, but that happens today, and it happened back then. I want to relate to you a story in first grade. Obviously, I'm feeling very different now. I've got my crutches and braces, and I don't fit in. I'm not part of the group. First grade teacher announces a field trip to the local fire hall. It's about a 5-block walk from the school, but it's a walk. And I'm slower than the rest of the group, and I know this. And I'm dreading this day coming because I don't want to be made a focal point by dragging everybody and slowing them down. So I'm dreading this day, and unfortunately the teacher told us 2 weeks in advance. So I got 14 days of anxiety building up. The day comes, and I don't want to go to school. I do not want to go. And my mom says, "You're going." "But Mom, you're going." "But Mom, you're going." I went. Teacher said, "Line up for the field trip walk." I went to the end of the line, figuring at least the rest of the class can go ahead of me and I'll be 2 blocks behind, but at least they won't see me and they won't slow down. Just before we're getting ready to leave, one of my little first grade classmates, and I never forgot his name, Ernie Pound, pulled his little red flyer wagon up and he said, "Dave, jump in, I want to pull you." Let me tell you, that changed that whole day for me. Made it a fun trip, enjoyable instead of the anxiety. It all washed away when Ernie brought his wagon up. The lesson in that is try to do something kind for someone every day of your life. Just a little act, because you don't know the impact of what you do in a positive sense will have on that other life. Unknown to me, now Ernie moved after first grade and I never saw Ernie again. Had the good fortune to write a book with a local sports writer on my career and life story. And I noted Ernie in the book. I noted this story and I put Ernie's name in the book. I didn't see Ernie again. And my partner, Doug Cornfield, who's here today, at the very first book signing I ever did, unknown to me, Doug found Ernie Pound 45 years later and had him show up at the book signing, unknown to me. And there was a line of people, and I would look up and I'd say, "Who would you like this signed to?" And I'd sign it.
Ernie Pound.
This is the video. How are you, buddy?
Hey, how are you?
You know you're in there. Where are you now?
I'm in Odessa.
You're in Odessa. This is a surprise. You knew he was coming, didn't you?
He did.
You knew he was coming.
He's quite a guy, that is.
You found him. I can't believe it.
Thank you very much. Can I have a picture?
You might tell it's a pretty touching moment for me. So I have Doug to thank for that. But anyway, we have created an award based on that story that Doug and I have termed the Dave Clark Pulling Each Other Along Award. And I had the privilege of giving Ernie one of those awards. Now, that didn't stop the picking after Ernie took me in the wagon. I still got picked on incessantly. And the funny thing is perception. We all in this room, including myself, tend to judge the book by the cover. All of us. And obviously my gym teachers in grade school judged the book by the cover, because up until 3rd grade, when we have gym class and the teacher would pull everybody together and say, this is what we're doing today, and clap their hands and say, let's go, Dave had a chair over on the sideline and was instructed to go sit in the chair. I didn't know any better, so I did it. I went and sat in the chair. Come 3rd grade, we had a different gym teacher. This was a life changer for me. First day of gym class in the 3rd grade, the new gym teacher pulls us all together and he says, this is what we're doing today. All right, let's go. Dave gets up and starts to the sideline. No chair. And I hear this booming voice, where are you going? Like, whoa. He was an ex-Marine. Here I am, 8, 9 years old, and I'm shaking, and I say, I'm going to, he said, not in my class. He said, there may be things you won't be able to do in my class, but you will never know until you try them. And in my class, you are going to try them. Well, the activity that day was climbing the rope to the ceiling. So I got to the end of the line, and when my turn came, and I went down to the bottom of that rope, and I looked up, and I went, there is no way in hell. Well, I didn't say hell in 3rd grade, but that's how I felt. That's how I felt. So I didn't have, from the waist down, I'm in braces, so I can't use my legs. I start putting one hand over the other, and I'm pulling one step at a time. I was the only kid in the class that got to the top. Only kid. My dilemma was, when I got to the top, you know how you make your little S to come down? I couldn't make my little S to come down. I'm kind of up there hanging, and I figured, well, I got to get down. So I slid down, and I burned the hell out of my hands. It was the best burn feel I've ever had in my life, to this day. And to top that all off, my gym teacher, Mr. Snetchler, gave me an ice cream bar, my first professional payoff. And I said, this is good stuff. Another life-changing moment for me was my dad. And my mom, of course. But my dad would play catch with me every day. Let me back up a minute. After the rope climbing, the next session we did in gym class was softball. Bam. Dave found his niche. I could hit, I could field, I could throw. Couldn't run. Couldn't run fast. But I figured I'll figure out a way to overcome that. So baseball became my thing. And baseball became, everybody in here knows about Jackie Robinson now because there's a movie out on him now. Baseball became my way of being accepted, my way out of the stereotypical perception of what a person with limitations can do. My dad helped me with that. He'd play catch with me every day after working 8 hours in a factory, coming home, play catch with me, shower, eat something quick, and go out and sell Fuller Brush. If anybody remembers Fuller Brush. Dad played catch with me every day. One day we're playing catch, we have a stone driveway, and he's throwing pop-ups, and I get under one of them, and I misjudging it, bam, right in the forehead, knocked me down. I'm a snow angel in the stones. I'm whimpering a little bit. Dad comes down, and I think he's going to pick me up, pat me, and say, well, we'll do it again tomorrow. He picks me up, pats me on the butt. I'm bleeding a little bit in the elbow, wipes it off, and he says, let's try that again. That taught me a lesson that no matter who you are and what you do, you're going to get knocked down. It's how you handle it, whether you're a success or not. Get up and do it again. get up and do it again. And Dad taught me that theory. I had a very early gift of analyzing, and it was because of my own situation. I had to analyze my strengths and where they fit in to the games I loved, where I would have my best chance at success in the sports that I chose to play. Baseball was number one. Believe it or not, ice hockey was number two. So basically in baseball, there were two positions I could play and have a little success at: pitching, first base. Not a lot of running involved. In ice hockey, I wasn't going to be a center, probably not a defenseman. I was a goalie. And this is not a hockey story, but I ended up playing hockey through collegiate club level hockey as a goaltender. But Dad started perpetuating the dream with me by playing catch every day, and I got into Little League. And then I started playing baseball on up through the different levels and having success and running to first base in 11 seconds instead of 4, which is the average. My strengths overweighed my weaknesses, and I loved the sport. I got a passion for it, along with ice hockey. I started to dream, and I realized there's two types of dreamers: dreamers that dream and dreamers that dream and do. And I fell into the latter category. I was willing to do anything I had to do to prepare for where I wanted to get to without any guarantees of an opportunity ever coming. And by 15 or 16 years old, I was dreaming that I wanted to take my abilities and see if I could play professionally. I wasn't sure I could, but I wanted to try it. My parents, they never said anything about it. They just supported me all the way. My grandfather, Dave, we have Corning Incorporated here in Corning, New York. Why don't you get a job with them and get some real security behind you? Well, I opted not to do that. I opted to follow my dream and my passion. I worked out 6 days a week, 4 hours a day. I ran 5 miles a day on these. 13-minute miles, but I ran 5 miles a day on these. I lifted weights, I did cals, I rode the stationary bike. I built myself up from the waist up to strengthen my strengths. Never guaranteed of an opportunity, but willing to do that, to get my shot and be ready if I did. Thank goodness there was a guy named Art Gaines with the Pittsburgh Pirates who came along and gave me my only shot. I wrote 24 major league teams, hand wrote letters. How absurd is that, where I'm looking at it from today, where a guy is handwriting 24 letters to major league clubs saying, I'd like a tryout. I have crutches and braces, but I would like a tryout with your organization. Can you imagine those general managers opening that? But one guy gave me a shot. Art Gaines, the Pittsburgh Pirates. My first day at the tryout, I bunted a ball into my eye. And I had a shiner built up on my eye, and I thought, that's probably pretty much all it's going to rate for me. I'm done. Bunt the ball in the eye. Now, this was in 1971. Still no designated hitter at that time. For those of you that know baseball, pitchers had too bad at that time. So I bunt the ball into my eye, and I'm thinking, I'm all done. They're going to send me home. Whatever he saw in me, he kept me. He kept me. He gave me my shot. I made it. He kept me. And thank God for the designated hitter, because 2 years later, I didn't have to bat anymore. I didn't have to run the bases and clog up the baselines anymore. But Mr. Gaines gave me the shot. I parlayed that shot into a 10-year pitching career. I had to think out of the box. I wasn't throwing 90 miles an hour. The fastest I was ever clocked throwing was 79. For those of you that know baseball, you can catch that with a Kleenex. So I was not an overpowering thrower. I had to do something else. I came up with a knuckleball. And I would throw the knuckleball, and that was my ticket. The knuckleball, I had a lot of success with it. I've also had some bad times with it, but most of the time I had pretty good success with the knuckleball. Ended up pitching in Sweden's major leagues. Yes, where's Sweden? My wife's not here, so I can say that she's from Sweden. I met her when I was playing over there. Blew my elbow out pitching in Sweden. That ended my 10-year career. And when I say I blew it out, I usually do things I do it the right way. When I do something, I do it the right way. I pulled the ligaments, tendons, and muscles completely free of the bone in my elbow. And you can only imagine, well, I couldn't use the crutches. I was in a wheelchair at that time for about a year after that injury. When I came back, I reinvented myself as a first baseman. Now, how absurd is that? And who in the world is going to sign a first baseman that's 5'2" with crutches and braces and can't run the bases? So I ended up buying my own team. I bought my own team, the Indianapolis Clowns, and I put myself in at first base. That's the only way I was going to be able to play. And to go a little step further, the Indianapolis Clowns are a very famous franchise in the Negro Leagues. So it ties in with the Jackie Robinson story now. They integrated in reverse in 1968. So the first white player for the Indianapolis Clowns came in 1968. The Indianapolis Clowns, why I'm in the scooter now, I'm digressing a little bit. Why I'm in the scooter now is I have a thing called post-polio, which was far more devastating to me than polio ever was. And I'll talk about that after I'm done here. Anybody wants to see me on it, I'll talk about anything. But post-polio made me step down as an active player with the Indianapolis Clowns in 1988. And I had the privilege of making the last out of the last game of the season for the Indianapolis Clowns, and we were the last link to the Negro Leagues. So you're looking at a guy that grounded out to third base that ended the game, the season, and the Negro Leagues, all in one bat, all in one bat. So during that period of time, when I was a first baseman for the Indianapolis Clowns, I played thousands of games, and you forget a lot of them, but there's one that sticks out in my mind, and it was in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And I had the absolute worst game of my career. I struck out 4 times. I let 2 ground balls go through my legs at first base that Billy Buckner could have fielded, if you know Billy Buckner. And I was in no mood after that game to talk to even my own teammates. I went into the clubhouse. Old clubhouse in Eau Claire had metal posts down the middle of in the clubhouse. And I went in and I took my crutch and I just started bam, bam against one of those metal posts, and the crutch took on the property of a C. You know, it started being a C instead of a straight line. And in comes one of my teammates, and they said, somebody would like to talk to you. I said, get away from me. Just get away. I don't want to talk to anybody right now. He said, no. Yeah, get away. No. Girl's in a wheelchair. You went. Well, I lost all my anger. I said, hey, can you jump on this crutch and try to straighten this out? I mean, this baby had a big hump in it. Now picture this. Here's a guy in a baseball uniform with cleats on, jumping up and down on this metal crutch, trying to straighten it back out. He got it straightened up, so I went back out. And here was a girl, about 12, 13 years old, and her dad. And her dad said, my daughter wanted to meet you. She thought it was amazing what you were doing out there. And I said to him, or both of them, I said, I had my absolute worst game of my career. He said, it didn't matter to her. And she said, Mr. Clark, it didn't matter. You were on the field. Let me tell you what, that changed my perspective for the rest of that season and beyond. Because you can go up and have the worst game you ever want to have, but you were on the field. I was on the field. I want to really quickly wrap this up. There's good management, there's bad management. Good management, the teams that got the most out of me, my coach took the time to come up hours before game time, put bunts down, see where I could cover my coverage area on a bunt, and adapt the rest of the team to helping me out on bunts. Catcher, third baseman, first baseman, had to come in quicker, play shallower. And that's what, as professionals, you want to do with people with limitations. Think outside the box, work with them, and use their strengths to better your team, your organization. I don't think I have time. One more story? One more story. One more story. This one's about my mom. After I retired, Mom came up to me one day, 20-some years after I started. She handed me a letter. And she explained to me that back in 1971, she had written a letter to Mr. Art Gaines, the scout for Pirates, asking him to please let me down easy, that it was my dream to play professional baseball. And she wanted to make sure that I got a legitimate shot, but please let Dave down easy. Don't crush him. She had the foresight to have the return letter sent to the neighbors because I occasionally picked the mail up. She gave me the return letter with tears in her eyes that day. And she said, "How could I have ever doubted you?" And gave me the letter. That meant a lot to me as well. Whatever it is you choose to do in life, give it all you got, because there's not a dream that's impossible. Thank you. Thank you.
Dave Clark, truly a game changer, is he not? What a phenomenal story to hear someone, against all odds, to take what little that he had and made a major difference and a major impact. We're going to transition into an interview, and we're going to ask that Doug would come. Doug has been a confidant, a friend, an advisor, and a supporter and strong advocate for Dave, and we want to just do some conversations between the two of them, so please indulge us. Dave, I'm just so in awe. We met a few weeks ago and we talked about your story, and Doug, we talked about what you guys have been doing for the foundation, etc. And it was amazing to me because I had never met Dave. I'd never heard the story before. And it's such a phenomenal story, and truly you are part of one of our nation's treasures. To be able to do what you've done, to be able to influence others to follow and make a path for those to follow. Baseball was a catalyst for civil rights. And back in the 50s, when there was none of the tools and technologies that we have in place today, and there was best practices and all the things that we benefit from today, Dave, what was it like during that era? How was your civil rights being violated during that time?
It wasn't easy at all. I didn't fit the mold of a baseball player. I didn't fit the mold of an athlete. When you get to the professional level, unfortunately, it's a clique. If you don't fit that mold, mm-hmm. You're looked at over a shoulder, or you're looked at differently. And in my career, I found that even my own teammates kind of ostracized me at the beginning. Mm-hmm. But when they saw me out, first guy at the field, doing running before anybody was there, as hard as I worked, it usually was about a 2-week period with every team before I turned them around. And once they turned around, it was amazing. Mm-hmm. Because then they'd go stick their face in front of a ground ball for me. Whereas the first 2 weeks, I was a man on an island all alone.
Amazing. So what was it like being in the dugout? Give us some of those stories.
We
go to baseball games and we see what's going on. What was it really like? What was it really like down in the dugout, Dave?
Or Or bullpen.
Oh, bullpen.
How
Sorry.
about bullpen?
Bullpen.
Well, there was a lot of stuff going on in the bullpen that we can't talk about here. But it was I think I missed that more than anything, is the camaraderie that you develop. I mean, you're playing with these guys for 6 months a year, 6, 7 months a year, and you really get strong bonds developed after the first 2 weeks. And I have many friends today that Doug, with social media, has
Coming out of the woodworks.
fortunately put me back in touch with. And it was an amazing experience. And when I sit where I'm at now, having post-polio, having to use a scooter now, it's pretty amazing for me to think about all that happened and what I did.
Wow, thank you for sharing. So you talked about allies, and certainly your parents were strong allies.
Yeah.
Give us another story about your parents. And you talked about how your dad threw the ball with you, and you played hockey, and your mom, and the letter that she wrote. What are some other support that you have from your family?
I got the belt.
You got the belt.
If back in the day, if you didn't, if you had some nice punishments going. I know when I told Mom I wanted to play hockey, she kind of, that was the only time I probably heard my parents balk a little bit, just a little. She said, I don't want you playing hockey because you'll come home with no teeth. And I said, and I swear to God, the first game I ever played, I was afraid to go home because I took a puck in the forehead and I had a golf ball sized bump on my head that was oozing a little blood when I went home, and I was afraid to go into my mom.
Sure, more afraid than your mom than you were playing
That's
hockey.
right, I was more
I think
afraid
we all
of
found
Mom,
ourselves
yeah.
in those situations from time
Yeah.
to time. Thank you for sharing that, Dave. Doug, you met Dave in Ithaca, New York.
Well, in Corning, New York.
Corning, New York,
Yeah,
right?
Corning.
Tell us how you came about meeting Dave.
So I grew up in an athletic family. My father was a world-class runner. I ran track at the University of Georgia on scholarship. And just growing up in the sporting goods industry and all those things, in 2000, year 2000, David won the Heroes of Sports Award for what he does for children with disabilities and military disability baseball camps. He got this national recognition, and it was in the Atlanta Constitution, and my wife and family we were living in the Atlanta area. Well, if anybody knows Corning or Corning Incorporated, it's a very small town of about 11,000 people. And in this article, I'm reading about this guy who played professional baseball, wondering, why in the world do I not know about this? And then it says he's from Corning, New York, which is my wife's hometown, which we were actually in the process of moving back to Corning during that same period of time. And so Dave, as the winds would blow or whatever, he had just finished a 10-year career of coaching and managing in the Swedish major leagues. 3 championships, by the way, as a coach. And so we're converging back to this area, unknown, and my 5th child, believe it or not, I have 7 children. And
Congratulations, by the
thank
way.
you.
Or you're nuts.
So my 5th child was born. My 5th child was born with neither arm developed, and at the time that we were moving back to Corning, or moving to Corning, he was just about 1 year old, wasn't walking yet, and I sought Dave out. He was coaching at a minor league team in the area, just part-time, helping them out as a pitching coach. And I sought him out because I wanted to know what Dave's parents did. That was my main motivation. Yeah, I wanted to meet him, and his story sounded interesting and everything. But and so he was just gracious to meet me for breakfast in beautiful Market Street of Corning, New York, and we talked, and I peppered him with questions. What did your parents do? What were those perspectives? And so that was kind of the initial meeting, and then I was working with Merrill Lynch at the time. He became my client. I got to know more about the story. Quickly, I started telling him this should be a movie, this should be something, right. And lo and behold, we wound up partnering basically officially 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago.
So great relationship and bringing that together. What was one of the practical things that Dave's parents shared with you, or Dave shared with you, that had a major impact on helping to rear your own children?
Yeah, so especially Gideon in this case, but really everybody, because we all have disabilities. I don't
Absolutely.
care who we are. So Dave, from a parent, don't limit your child unnecessarily. Mm-hmm. If there's one message that I love him to share, we do disability baseball camps and hockey camps now with professional teams. And it's important for me that the whole family comes, the parents especially, because I want him to share that message with these parents. Yes, you're going to maybe get knocked down. Maybe they're going to get a bruise on the head. But don't unnecessarily, obviously we have to protect our children, but don't unnecessarily hold them back from what they're capable of.
Great, thank you for sharing. Dave, you talked about what you say versus what you do, and you've done a lot. Talk a little bit about your foundation and why the foundation.
Well, in 1992, I started doing baseball camps at the Bath VA Center in Bath, New York. So our first camp was for veterans, amputees, wheelchair-bound, some with mental limitations, whatever it was. We did a baseball camp, and it turned out everybody had a great time, and we just got a lot of positive feedback from that, and we ended up doing these camps for anyone with a disability or limitations. And it's just, since Doug and I have gotten together, we don't charge a dime for any of these camps, and we provide lunch and T-shirts, caps, and you name it. And it's just a wonderful event for the entire family, and we morphed it over into hockey now because of my connection with hockey. And what I didn't mention, I still do some play-by-play for hockey for the Florida Everblades in Fort Myers. So I've kept my hand in that game as well through broadcasting, and we've done our first hockey camp. We're now online to do a couple more, to see one of these events would win everybody in this room over, because it blew my mind away too. And the feedback we get from the parents is, our child's never had the opportunity to do anything like this. Why? Why not? And so we're answering that question. We're putting these on.
That's just so remarkable.
Hopefully we can get a picture. Is that, he's working on that, just at one of our camps that we do with the Minnesota Twins.
While you're talking about it, I want to morph into a little bit about, and I'm not bashing Challenger Little League Baseball at all, because there's a spot for Challenger Little League. But my point is, there's a perception that everybody, had Challenger Little League Baseball been around when I was coming up through the ranks, I probably wouldn't be sitting here, because my full potential would not have been reached because somebody else's perception. And what I'm saying is, I don't care what the book cover looks like. Find out what's in the book. Find out what's in the book and give that book a chance. And then if they need to be in a Challenger Little League, okay, fine. But don't put them in there without opening the cover.
Absolutely. I think that's some great advice. With disabilities being one of the fastest growing demographics in this country today, it is imperative that we look for solutions to be able to harness the workforce, to be able to provide solutions and strategies to ensure that everyone, regardless of their ability or disability, race or gender, sexual orientation, region of the world they come from, will be able to thrive and strive. And the efforts and the work that you've done has catapulted us into a situation where we can now look at this and examine this and provide solutions. And I believe that your foundation provides a safe place for not only the youth or the young, the people with disabilities to attend, but also a safe space for learning amongst those who are volunteering to be a part of that. Right. So Doug, as a corporation, we all represent corporations here today, what are some of the things that we could do to make it different, to make a difference?
Yeah, at this point, we're still growing. Last year, this camp that you see over here, it's with the Minnesota Twins. It's their minor league team down in Fort Myers. They've started that 8 years ago, and we call it Disability Dream and Do, is what we've come up with, a D3 event. And now we do D3 hockey, D3 baseball, and we're open to D3 all sports, really. But this camp was voted minor league promo of the year last year. We were runner-up. We got second in the voting, even though it was a tie, 23% with the other event. But that's now pushed us to, we're doing with the Milwaukee Brewers, their AAA team, with the Rochester Red Wings, which is the Minnesota Twins AAA, doing with the Mets. And so, but really, the big thing is, we get the volunteers, you get the players, and with these kids, it's a wonderful event. And of course, the corporate sponsorships and the funding is just necessary. Once we get that, we could be doing these with other athletes that we've already connected with. We have other Dream and Do athletes, as I call them. That we have this one young man who's pitching his last season. He's got cerebral palsy. He has to pitch and throw with the same hand because he's paralyzed on the right side of his body. And he came to our camp, was a great encouragement. And so these things could be done nationwide. And with the connections of Dave, it's just a matter of timing and growing and building.
Right. Right. I asked that question deliberately because as corporations represented today, we ask ourselves from time to time, what can we do to help to move the envelope? How can we make a difference? And most of you should have affinity groups. If not, we'll have affinity groups or network groups that you can actually help to partner with organizations such as the foundation, Dave's Foundation, to help provide safe place and provide that mutual adaptation. Giving us, we can train about diversity and inclusion until the cows come home. But until we actually put ourselves in those situations to build the skills, to move beyond awareness, and to be able to leverage those differences and practice how we integrate with each other, we're not going to get the resolve that we're technically looking for. So I did that deliberately. They wouldn't take a dime and didn't come here for today, but I did it deliberately just as a practitioner in this space to make sure that we have a responsibility as a corporations to help to grow and to have to give back to the organization. I typically end the sessions with asking, what is your legacy? And I think, Dave, you're actually living your legacy, if I'm not mistaken, with the foundation. Is that not true?
Dave, that picture there.
Yeah. I mean, I've been blessed and been fortunate with. I mean, people look at me and they go, "Wow, you've been dealt a bad hand." Not really. Not really. To do everything that I've been able to do with the limitations that God gave me, I feel blessed, and I'm trying to pass that along. This little guy right here, one of my favorites over the Christmas holidays. I met up with him and still keep in touch with him by a phone and letter. And I've encouraged him now. He's playing basketball and really picked it up.
Indoor hockey camp.
Yeah, indoor.
He's got
hockey.
the stiff. I don't know what it's called, so forgive me. But
Stiff
he's got
joints.
stiff joints, and he's had multiple operations. He lit up when he found out what Dave did.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, he's dribbling the basketball, and he's wanting Dave to see him shoot, and all these things, all in 30 minutes. And then he came to one of our hockey camps and did our disability hockey camp. And he was like floating, his mother said.
Wow.
Just out of the thing. And then we actually pulled him on, and we do a ceremonial puck drop. And he was one of our that joined us, and he was able to drop the puck with Dave and I. And just those are the kind of things that our Disability Dream and Do event gives a child like him the avenue to see beyond his limitations. And that's really important to us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Doug, so you're living a legacy as well.
Yeah, it's fun.
But why? And I know you're because of your children. But what's around the corner for the foundation?
Well, we're there's some things I can't say probably. So we'd love to be doing these with many sports, and so I'm going to have to get an events coordinator because we're getting quite busy right now with some of the more business side of what Dave's doing. We'd love to get more speaking. I'd love to get more speaking. Dave, he'd love to get more speaking because it helps us to get more things going for the camp. But we're shaking Hollywood right now with Dave's story, and we're having significant conversations in that arena, and of course that is really more of a financial to help with what what his real heart. This is his heart.
Yeah. Dave, by the way, as I talked to him, he would do this for free.
Absolutely.
The satisfaction comes from being able to give back and what he's been given through his life. So certainly that's to be commended for.
Right.
So I would be remiss if I did not invite each of you today to have, those of you who would like to have a question, we have just a few minutes to ask a question from the audience.
I'll answer almost everything.
He says almost everything. He wouldn't
Nothing
give me,
from
he
that
would,
table?
He wouldn't give me he wouldn't give me nothing from the dugout and from the what's the other called the
bullpen.
The bullpen. I wanted to really know what was happening down there, but he wouldn't give me that.
And there's some great stories in his book, which he's going to be over here to do that as well, and sign some books. And there's just a lot of these stories. They're just real. You don't have to make them up.
Yeah.
And they're very fun.
Any questions from the audience? Yes. Is there a mic up front here?
We'll be able to hear you. I'll repeat it.
Yeah, that's good.
As a parent with a child that was recently diagnosed with some visual impairments and a visual spatial disorder, the doctors tell you, well, your child probably shouldn't play certain sports, and then they begin to list. How can we get you in front of the doctors to tell them, not to tell us, not to let them do things?
That's a very tough question. I can tell you this, we had a blind girl at the camp, in Fort Myers, and I think it just takes common sense, number one. We don't want any of our kids to go over a danger line, but you can't let them not touch and get burned once in a while, because that's how you learn. To be frank, when I saw this little blind girl at the camp, I'm sitting there going, oh my goodness, now, how's this going to work? One of the Twins minor league players was underhanding the ball to her, trying to hit, and she was missing and missing and missing. And so I just said, well, let's try this. I went to the little girl, I said, he's going to yell now when he lets go of the ball. Let's see if we can time the now to making contact with your bat. And I went out to him and I said, you yell now every time you let go. By the third time we did that, she was ripping the ball. And the smile on her face, because she had accomplished something that somebody told her was not possible. And that parlays through life, because now she's got I've always said, confidence breeds success, and success breeds confidence. It's a catch-22. So we want to encourage. I've seen so much. We find it very easy to criticize, but we find it so hard to encourage. Why? Why is that? I don't understand that. I mean, we can cut out, oh, look at that guy. What is the hell? And you can say it in jest and you can say it in fun. That's fine. But when it gets down to it, let's encourage people. Let's encourage, because there's a lot more positive that comes out of encouragement than there is out of criticizing. And how I would answer your question is I would go to the specific doctor involved and tell them, first of all, you heard me speak. And,
Yes.
And secondly, not that I'm a professional, but I can go back to my own story where my doctor said I had to have a back surgery to straighten out the scoliosis from the polio. I was 15 or 16 at the time. My parents went with me. The doctor's in there telling my parents why I had to have this done. When he got done with his spiel, I said, yes, but I said, if I do that, will that limit my mobility? How will I go up steps now after I've learned how to go up steps this way my whole life? You'll have to relearn. I said, I can't do that. I said, I'm going to play professional baseball, and I got to have all the agility and mobility I can get. He looked at me like I was a cyclops with one eye. Like, what are you talking about? And he looked back to my parents, he's got to have this done. We went outside, and my parents said, Dave, it's your body, it's your life. What do you want to do? Before we left, though, I dug the needle into the doctor a little deeper, because I said, oh, by the way, I want to take my right leg brace off now so that I have more speed and mobility. He said, you can't take that off. When we got outside and I was talking to my parents about the back operation, I took the right leg brace off. It hasn't been on to this day. Doctors have a vital role in our health system. They're not God. They're not always right. And you've got to go do what you feel is right for your daughter. And if it goes against what the doctor's saying, so be it. So be it. Take your daughter's individual circumstances, and you know her strengths. Your parents know the strength of their children, and you know her limits. You make that decision based on what you know. That's my advice.
Any other questions from the audience? We have one back here.
I'm Dennis Selznick with Sprint, and I have a question. You were a manager, not just a player, but a manager for some time in Sweden. You even won championships. How did you approach your players to get their respect, get them to see you equally with them to lead them to success?
That's a great question, and I learned so much from, I ran out of time in my talk because I'm so long-winded. I learned so much from my playing career from the managers that dealt with me, and I had good ones and I had bad ones. The one thing I learned throughout my playing career was that you can't pigeonhole everybody. What works for you may not work for me. And what works for that guy might not work for this guy. So as a manager, I respected that. And I always said, look, buddy, if you can go stand on your head in the batter's box and hit 300, I'm not screwing with you. You can stand on your head and do what's successful. On the other hand, if they wanted help, I wouldn't tell them. I was in an organization once, the Chicago White Sox, where they had Charlie Lau. I don't know if anybody remembers that name. But everybody had to hit the Charlie Lau way. Everybody. Whether you were a power hitter, a singles hitter, a gap hitter, you had to hit Charlie Lau. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. And as corporate heads, you can't bring in people with limits, or anybody for that matter, in my opinion, and expect to have it one way for everybody. It doesn't work. You have you've got to diversify your approach to each person. And as a manager, and that's why I had to step down in 2000, because my post-polio had advanced. I got hit with post-polio in 1988. That ended my playing career. I went into coaching in 90 through 2000. I had to step down in 2000 from coaching full-time because of post-polio, because I couldn't do it the way I wanted to do it. The way I did it was for a night game at 8 o'clock. I was out there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on the field working with my players. You know, I'd take 4 or 5 guys a day. I might come in early tomorrow. We're going to work on this. And I'd take the time and effort. That's how I got their respect. They knew I wanted to win. They knew I cared about them. And they knew I cared about their and I got to know their families. Because I truly did care about them. Because when you do that, now you got a winning team. Now you got a winning team.
I think you hit on something with corporate America, one size fits all. We need to really understand that diversity, when we think about diversity, we think it's something to be managed. It's actually a difference to be leveraged. So we need to shift the paradigm and stop trying to manage the situation as you did with your team. He didn't manage, he leveraged everyone and met them where they were. And diversity is a journey and not a destination, but a journey. We didn't get here overnight. We're not going to resolve this issue overnight. But having some of the same principles and the values that Dave talked about helps us to better understand how to leverage those differences for the greater good. We just can't be, everyone can't be a Michael Jordan. Everyone can't be an Oprah Winfrey or Barack Obama or Michelle Obama. We all have different skill sets. We come from different backgrounds. We need to recognize and honor those differences for the greater good of the organizations in which we serve.
And a last comment on that, as one of the strengths I think I had as a manager was identifying the strengths in my players. A lot of guys that I played for said, work on your weaknesses, make them better. What the hell do I want to do that for? I'm going to pull away from my strengths the time I devote to my weakness, and I'm going to make them both mediocre. What got me here? My strengths got me here. So I want to continue working on my strengths to make them stronger. What I did as a manager was I identified the strengths of the players I was dealing with on my team. And I plugged them into where I felt they had the most chance of succeeding. You know, I put them in the leadoff hitter role. I wouldn't put the leadoff guy in the number 4 hole, and vice versa. And I found the strengths. I bring in a pitcher to get one guy out, because I knew if he faced the next hitter, he's probably going to get ripped. But he get the one guy out. Now he starts success. Now I pull him out. He's done his job. He feels good. Next time out, he gets 2 hitters, and he gets them out. Now we're doing that success, confidence, success thing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Dave and Doug, let's give a round of applause.
Thank you.
It's just been an absolutely phenomenal all-ball game.